Assessing Writing. Team: María Mercedes Zavala, Roberto Zavala, and Marco Oliver. The subject: Teoría en técnicas de evaluación, the professor, María Fernanda Castillo.
Introducing presentation on Chapter 9 of the book Language Assessment Principles and Classroom Practices by Brown. And the topic that we will be talking about is assessing writing. Not many centuries ago, writing was a skill that was the exclusive domain of scribes and scholars in educated or educational religious institutions. Most of the daily life for common people was done orally, or on the contrary, legal documents, records, etc. were written by specialists that basically dedicated their life on writing. As we know, today the ability to write has become an indispensable skill in our global literary community. We now understand the uniqueness as writing as a skill with own features and conventions. We also understand the difficulty of learning to write well in any language, even in our own native language. Yet, as teachers, we expect for second language learners to elaborate a coherent essay. Now, genres of written language. The following list includes the most common genres that a second language writer might produce within and beyond the requirements of a curriculum. The first one we have is academic writing, in which it includes papers and general subject reports, essays, compositions, academically focused journals, short answer test response, technique reports, example lab reports, theses, and dissertations. The next type of writing we have is job-related writing, which includes messages. It could be phone messages, letters, emails, memos, reports, schedules, labels, signs, advertisement, announcements, and manuals. And the last type of genre is the personal writing, which is letters, emails, greeting cards, invitations, messages, notes, calendar entries, shopping lists, reminders, diaries or personal journals, etc. Now we have the types of writing performance. The first one is imitative. To produce written language, the learner must attain skills in the fundamental, basic tasks of written letters, words, punctuation, and very brief sentences. The second one is intensive, controlled. Beyond the fundamentals of writing are skills in producing appropriate vocabulary within a context, collocations, and idioms in a correct grammatical features up to the length of a sentence. The third one is the response. Here, assessment tasks require learners to perform at a limited discourse level, connecting sentences into paragraphs and creating a logically connected sequence of 2 or 3 paragraphs. And the fourth one, the last one, is extensive. Extensive writing implies successful management of all the processes and strategies of writing for all purposes, up to the length of an essay, a term paper, a majority or major research project report, or even a thesis. Now we have the micro and the macro skills of writing. The micro skills apply more appropriate to imitative and intensive types of writing tasks, while the macro skills are essential for the successful mastery of responsive and extensive writing. Micro skills. We have 3 examples here. The first one, produce the orthographic patterns of English. The second one, produce writing at an efficient rate of speed to suit the purpose. And the third one, produce an acceptable core of words and use appropriate word order patterns. Now we have macro skills. The first example is to use the rhetorical forms and conventions of written discourse, appropriately accomplish the communicative functions of written text according to the form and purpose, and convey links and connections between events and communicate such relations as main idea, supporting idea, no information, given information, and generalization and exemplification. Now we have the task in hand, writing letters, words, and punctuation. The first one, and I think the most common one, is copying. There is nothing new about this, and here's an example. For children, we have an alphabet writing copy. The first letters above are shown very concentrated in a black color, while the ones in the bottom have a slightly gray color, so the test takers can trace it and almost copy it identically. The second one is listening closed section tasks. These combine dictation with a written script that has a relatively frequent dilation ratio, every fourth or fifth word perhaps. The sheet provides a list of missing words from which the test taker must select. And here we have an example where there are missing words and the test taker has to listen closely in order to find out and discover which word belongs to which blank. The third one, picture cued tasks. Familiar pictures are displayed and test takers are told to write the word that the picture represents. Here we have some common house objects, and at the bottom of it is, for example, a cat, a clock, and a chair. Now, form completion tasks. A variation on pictures is the use of simple form, registration, application, etc. that asks for name, address, phone number, and other data. Here we have, for example, a job title, a name, an assigned topic, and a completion time. The next one is converting numbers and abbreviations to words. Some tests have a section on which numbers are written, for example, hours of the day, dates, or schedules, and the test takers are directed to write out the numbers. Here we have, for example, 9 o'clock. We have Tuesday, we have a street name. Now, spelling tasks and detecting phoneme grapheme correspondence. Spelling test. In traditional old-fashioned spelling test, the teacher dictates a simple list of words, one word at a time, followed by the words in a sentence repeated again, with a pause for a test take. The test takers have a short time just to write the word. Picture cue tasks. Pictures are displayed with the objective of focusing familiar words whose spelling may be unpredictable. And multiple choice techniques. Presenting words and phrases in the form of a multiple choice task crossing over into the domain of addressing reading, but if the terms have to follow up writing component, they can serve as formative reinforcement of spelling conventions. And here we have an example in which there are 5 options. Now, matching phoneme symbols. If students have become familiar with the phonetic alphabet, they could be shown phonetic symbols and asked to write the correctly word alphabetically. And here we have some examples in which there is a symbol of one of the phonetic symbols in the alphabet. A number of task types are in popular use to assess the ability to spell words correctly and to process phoneme graphic correspondences. Now we have designing assessment tasks, intensive control writing. A good deal of writing at this level is display writing as opposed to real writing. Students produce language to display their competence in grammar, vocabulary, or sentence formation, and not necessarily to convey meaning for an authentic purpose. Now we have dictation and dictocompt. Dictation is simply the rendition of writing of what one hears orally, so it could be classified as an imitative type of writing, especially since the proportion of the test taker's performance centers on correct spelling. A form of controlled writing related to dictation is dictocompt. Here, a paragraph is read at normal speed, usually 2 or 3 items. Then the teacher asks students to rewrite the paragraph from the best of their recollection. Next, we have grammatical transformation tests. To this day, language teachers also have used this technique as an assessment test to measure grammatical competence. Numerous versions of the tests are possible. For example, we can change the tense in the paragraph, change full forms of verbs to reduce forms, which are contractions, change statements to yes, no, or WH questions, change questions into statements, or combine 2 sentences into one using a relative pronoun, or change direct speech into indirect speech, and finally change from active to passive voice.
Okay, let's start with the vocabulary assessment task. So it means the vocabulary assessment is clearly focused in the above task, but the procedures and creativity linked by means of the target word, its collocation, and its morphological variations. To the next slide. Most vocabulary study is carried out through reading a number of assessments, readings like it's common, multiple choice techniques, matching picture, cue identification, clause techniques, and guessing the meaning of the word in context. The major techniques used to access vocabulary and defining and using a word sentence and give us a clear example. And it says a grade 2 sentence A and B. In each sentence use the 2 words given. So in the example as given, interpret and experiment. So that's the 2 words. With those words you need to do create a sentence depend of the text that you read it. Ordering task. One task at the sentence level may appeal to those who are found the word games and puzzles. Ordering, in other words, reordering a scrambled set of words into the correct sentence. Here is a way to the item form appears. So they give another clear example. This is very common to do with the students because it's easy to do it. So you give the students a couple of words, and the students need to make a sentence in the correct order. Is so in assessing responsive and extensive greeting. Responsive greetings create the opportunity for the test takers to offer and narrate the possible creative responses within a pedagogical or assessment framework. Test takers are responding to prompt or assignment free from the strict control of intensive greeting. Learners can exercise a number of options in choosing vocabulary, grammar and discourse, but with some constraints and conditions. So they mentioned here types of gender of text. We have 5 genders. The first one is short reports with structure, formats, and conventions. Another one is responses to reading of article or story. Another is summarizes of articles or stories. Another one brief narratives and descriptions, and the last one is interpretations of graphs, tables, and charts. Continue with with responsive and extensive reading. We have three important points. The first one is authenticity. It is a trait that is given special attention. If the test takers are being asked to perform a task, its phase and content validity need to be assured in order to bring out the best in the greater. A good deal of written performance in academic context is constrained by the pedagogical necessities of establishing the basic building blocks. Our written, we have looked at assessment techniques. Another one is, I think it's the most important with the last one. So this is scoring. It's the turning issue. Those final two stages of reading with so many options available to a learner. Each evaluation by the test administrator need to be finally attuned, not just how the grader strings work together. In this case, is the form, but also saying the function of text. It's mentioned the same. The quality of written is in impact and effectiveness becomes as important, if not more important, than all the nuts and bolts that hold it together. The last one, and I mentioned you, this is the most important. Is so it is the time. The assessment issues surrounds the unique nature of written. It is the only skill in which the language producer is not necessarily constrained time, which implies the freedom to process multiple drafts before the text becomes a finished product. Time impromptu format is valid method of assessing written ability. So you can use time to measure the ability of your students. A clear example will be the dictation. Assessment task, responsive and extensive reading, paraphrasing. This one is one of the most complicated concepts. If you are in the second language, is if the English is your second language, because the graphs in paraphrasing, the initial step in teaching paraphrasing is to ensure to learning to understand the importance of paraphrasing, to say something in one on words, to avoid plagiarizing, to offer some variety of expressions. Another one is not too complicated than the last one, than the before one, but it's have a couple of complicated too. Is guide question and answer. Another lower order task in this type of reading, which has the pedagogical benefits of guide learner without dictating the formal output, is a guide question and answer format in which the test administrator possesses a series of questions that essentially serve an outline of the emerging written task. And we have the guide written test, which is maybe as long as 2 or 3 paragraphs, maybe a score or either analytic or holistic scale. We have a variation on using guide questions is to prompt the test takers to write from on an outline. Paragraph construction task. Assessment of paragraph development takes a number of different forms. And we have, in this case, 2 forms: topic sentence greeting and topic development with a paragraph. So I'm going to start with the topic sentence greeting first. There is not a cardinal rule to say every paragraph must have a topic sentence, but the standing of the topic through the lead sentence or subsequent one. Assessment thereof consists of specifying and written of the topic, scoring points for its presence, and scoring and communicating on its effectiveness in studying the topic. So let's move to another one. Topic development with within a paragraph. Paragraphs are intended to provide a reader with a cluster of meaningful connected through or ideas. Another stage of assessment is development of an idea within a paragraph. The clarity of expression of ideas, the logic of the sequence of the connections, the cohesiveness or unity of the paragraph, and the overall effectiveness and impact of the paragraph as a whole. Development Development of main and supporting ideas across paragraph. As a greeter string two or more paragraphs together in a long text, and as a move up the continuum from responsive to extensive greeting. The writer attempts to articulate and test or main idea with a clearly stated supporting ideas. Those elements can be considered in evaluating a multiple paragraph essay. Example: addressing the topic, main idea, or principal purpose, organizing and developing supporting ideas, using appropriate details to undergird supporting ideas, showing facility and fluency in the use of language, and demonstrating syntactic variety. So let's move with the strategic options. Developing main of the supporting ideas is the goal for the writer attempting to create an effective text, whether a short or one or two paragraph, one or the answer extensive or one of the several pages. The first one we have attending to task. So this is or this following the attending to ginger. So attending to ginger have 6 points, so 6 gingers. The first one is reports. In other words, can call it lab reports, project summarizes, articles, and book reports. So we have 2 summarizes of reading lectures and videos. The next one is basically contains the same of the summarizes, but is responses to readings, but contains 2 lectures and videos. In narration, descriptions, and persuasion, arguments, and expositions. So this means it's only talk about the text or some presentations the teacher gives the students. Visual. Another one is interpreting strategical, graphic, and tabular data. And the last one is library research paper. So that's all for me.
Assessing Writing, Part 3. We're starting the Part 3 talking about the Test of Written English, the TWE. One of the several internationally available standardized tests of writing skill is the Test of Written English, or TWE. The TWE was established in 1986. It has gained a reputation as a well-respected measure of written English, and numerous research articles support its validity. In 1998, a computer-delivered version of the TWE was incorporated into the standard computer base of TOEFL and simply labeled as the writing section of the TOEFL. The TWE is commonly used for proficiency and admission testing and is still offered as a separate test, especially where only the paper-based TOEFL is available. The TWE is in the category of a time impromptu test, in that the test takers are under a 30-minute time limit and are not able to prepare ahead of time for the topic that will appear. Topics are prepared by a panel of experts following specifications for topics that represent commonly used discourse and are taught patterns at the university level. Here on the bottom we can observe a chart in which shows three different topics that it could be the ones that students or takers can develop their writing if they take the TWE test. The scoring guide for the TWE follows a widely accepted set of specifications for a holistic evaluation of an essay. Each point of the scoring system is defined by a set of statements that address the topic, organization, and developments, supporting ideas, facility, fluency, naturalness, and appropriateness in writing, grammatical and lexical correctness, and choice. In this slide, we can observe on the left the chart of the guidelines to grade the test of written English. The test takers can get from 6 points to 0 points. There are certain characteristics in each of the grading points in which each of the essays is scored by two trained readers independently, and the final score assigned is the mean of the two independent ratings. The test taker can achieve from 1 to 6 possible half points in between. So, the controversy. All of the time important tests have obvious limitations, and the TWE is not the exception. The level of authenticity is arguable due to the real-world context in which test takers will have to write an essay in 30 minutes. Therefore, neither the TWE nor any other test that represents such limitations will be an indicator of a person's writing ability. The controversy of the TWE reminds us that this type of standardized tests are not infallible or non-fail-safe measures of competence. Furthermore, it is highly questionable the type of feedback or formative assessment that they would offer to the test takers. These tests cover mostly administrative necessities for academic institutions where hundreds or thousands of applicants must be evaluated. The convenience of the TWE should not limit the administrator's view in believing that the TWS and the TOEFLs are the only measuring tools to apply to students, especially to measure those that are barely on the minimum grade to be discarded, the ones that suffer from anxiety, or the ones whose cultural origin is different from the school they are applying to. So we must consider that these are some drawbacks for any person who are willing to take the TWE because the topics might be something that that the person has never seen before, and therefore is not a real proof and or something that we can actually take as a valid result. Another topic in this section is scoring methods for responsive and extensive writing. There are three major approaches used by test designers to score responsive and extensive writing performance levels: holistic, primary trait, and analytical. The first one, holistic scoring. In this type of evaluation, each point is given based on a group of specifications in an overall scale of rubric. The reader evaluator matches a general impression of the specifications to get a final grade. These specifications usually follow a described pattern. In general, they can refer to quality of the task, organization, grammatical and rhetorical considerations, and so on. We can consider that scoring is truly holistic because those subsets are not quantitatively added up to give a score. In the holistic scoring, we must consider the advantages and disadvantages. In the advantages, we have the fast evaluation, relatively higher inter-rater reliability, the fact that scores represent standards that are easily interpreted, the fact that scores tend to emphasize the writer's strengths, and the applicability to writing across many different disciplines. In the disadvantages, one score masks differences across subskills within each score. No diagnosis information is available, no washback potential. The scale may not apply equally well to all genres of writing, and raters need to be extensively trained to use the scale accurately. In general, it is useful for designers and teachers to use it only when it is expedient for administrative purposes. It would be appropriate for admission to institutions if the evaluator is experienced enough to differentiate all the characteristics required. For a classroom institutional purposes, it requires some more elements that provide more information that it fits the group's needs. The second one is the primary trait scoring. This method focuses on how well students can write within a narrowly defined range of discourse. This type of scoring emphasizes that the task at hand and assigns a score based on the effectiveness of the text achieving that goal. It is more related to highlight functions of the language within the text. For rating this method, it goes from 0, from no response or fragmented responses, to 4 if the goal is achieved. It almost goes without saying that organizations supporting details, fluency, syntactic variety, and other features will be evaluated implicitly in the process of offering the primary trait. In summary, a primary trait would assess 1. The accuracy of the account of the original, if it refers to a summary. Number 2. The clarity of the steps in the procedure and the final result, if it refers a lab report. The number 3, the description of the main features of the graph, basically a graph description. And the number 4, the expression of the writer's opinion, the response of an article. The analytic scoring. For a classroom instruction, holistic scoring provides a little washback into the writer's later stages of learning. Primary trait scores focuses on the primary function of the text and therefore offers some feedback potential, but no washback for any of the aspects of the reading production that improves the ultimate accomplishment of the purpose. For classroom evaluation of learning is best attended through analytic scoring. This type of scoring includes 6 major writing aspects to score, thus allowing learners to focus on weaknesses and capitalizing strengths. The analytic scoring might be better called analytic assessment because it is more related to the classroom language instruction rather than formal testing. Brown and Bailey in 1984 designed an analytical scoring scale that specified 5 major categories and a description of 5 levels in each category, going from unacceptable to excellent. The analytic scoring takes in consideration organization, logical development of ideas, grammar, punctuation, spelling, mechanics, and style, and quality of expression. The order in which these categories are listed may bias the evaluator toward the greater relevance of organization and logical development compared to punctuation and style. However, the mathematical assignment of a 100-point scale gives equal weight to each of the 5 major categories. In this slide, we can observe the first part of the table from the analytic scale for writing composition tasks from Brown and Bailey from 1984. The number 1 is the organization, which includes the introduction, body, and conclusion. The grading goes from 20, the highest, to number 1 being the lowest, and obviously each of those categories, they represent different descriptions in order to be in this range. Number 2, logical development of ideas, the content. In the next, in this slide, we have the category number 3, like the grammar, and the 5 categories in which is graded. Number 4, punctuation, spelling and mechanics, and all the characteristics within this area. And the last one, the style and quality of expression, and basically some of the descriptions in each of those categories. Everything, for example, is graded like the content, 30 points, organization, 20 points, vocabulary, 20 points, syntax, 25 points, and mechanics, 5 points, giving a total of 100. In here it's important to take in consideration these notes. In the analytic scoring, aspects such as the proficiency level and the genre must be considered to properly match the classroom evaluation. Beyond scoring, responding to extensive writing, objective scoring procedures. Formal testing brings within the responsibility of creating practical and reliable instruments that assess their intended criteria correctly. Therefore, designers have in the task to grade writing tests as objectively as possible within all the possible options. Yet further the numbers that represents a grade, there's a rich domain of assessment in which an emerging writer is coached between stages in the process to build a variety of writing skills. The specialist opinion. Most writing specialists agree that the best way to teach writing is by hands-on approach that stimulates students' output and then generates a series of self-assessment, peer editing, and revision, and teacher response and conferencing. Um, it is not about memorizing a large number of rules or asking for a large number of assignments. People become good writers by writing and seeking for the facilitative input of the others to refine their skills. To continue on the topic, assessment takes on a crucial role in such an approach. Learning how to become a good writer places the student in a constant stage of assessment. It is important to consider all the stages in the process to give the student the maximum benefit of assessment, from earlier stages to later stages of producing a written text. During the process, it is also important the involvement of self, peers, and teacher at specific steps along the process. The writing stages. As we saw in the previous slide, we have two main stages in the writing process. The first one, assessing initial stages in the process of composing. In this aspect, we have 7 guidelines that it can help us to perform or grade the initial stages. The first characteristic is focus your efforts primarily on meaning, main idea, and organization. Number 2, comment in the introductory paragraph. 3, make general comments about the clarity of the main idea and logic or appropriateness of the organization. The number 4, as a rule of thumb, ignore minor grammar or lexical errors. Number 5, indicate what appear to be major errors but allow the writer to make corrections. The number 6, do not rewrite questionable, ungrammatical, and awkward sentences, rather prove with a question about meaning. And the number 7, comment on features that appear to be irrelevant to the topic. Basically, the teacher's role is as a guide, a facilitator, and an ally. Therefore, assessment at this stage of writing must be as positive as possible to encourage the writer. An early focus on overall structure and meaning will enable writers' confidence, clarify their purpose and plan, and will establish a framework with the writer's later refinement of lexical and grammatical issues. Then to complement, we have assessing later stages of the process of composing. In this area, we have 6 components that are like the guidelines to follow up in order to grade the later stages. The number 1, comment on the specific clarity and strength of all the main ideas and supporting ideas and on argument and logic. The number 2, call attention to minor grammatical and mechanical errors, but direct to the writer to self-correct. Comment on any further word choices or expressions that may not be awkward but are not as clear or direct as they could be. And the number 4, point out any problems with cohesive devices within across paragraphs. The number 5, if appropriate, comment on documentation, citation of sources, evidence, and other support. And the number 6 and last, comment on the adequacy and strength of the conclusion. Through all these stages, it is assumed that peers and teacher are both responding to the writer in different forms. All these developmental stages might be the preparation that learners need to function in creative and real-world writing tasks and to successfully demonstrate their competence in any writing test. Chapter conclusion. This chapter completes the cycle to evaluate the possibilities when assessing any of the 4 language skills. There are two final points to consider in the process. Number 1. It is nearly impossible to isolate any of the four skills without the involvement of at least one another mode of performance. Do not underestimate the power of the integration of skills in assessments planned to target a single skill area. The number 2. The variety of assessment techniques, item types, and tasks are almost infinite in that there is always some possibility for creating a unique version of your own. Explore those alternatives cautiously and do not let that sense of innovation distract you from your main objective and deliver an appropriate evaluation of performance. Thank you for watching.